Ladies and gentlemen, we are doing the impossible today. I am continuing another series on the channel. Shout out Chris Move, you know what I'm saying? But a couple weeks ago, I did a terrible takes of NBA Twitter video. And as I said in that video, I am looking to make this a series. So if you guys want to go ahead and send me your hot takes for me to react to in future iterations of this video, go ahead and follow me on Twitter. Links will be right there somewhere. You know what I'm saying? I can't really promise y'all when I'll tweet stuff out, but when I do, y'all can take advantage of it and post your hot takes, and hopefully you will be in a future episode of this video. But y'all know the drill, man. We got a couple of tweets to talk about today, whether I agree or disagree with them. And shout out to Anthony Fantano, you know what I'm saying? Inspiration for the series. And Souls to Knee Bethano is definitely in the building today. But before we move on, shout out to this guy from the last video. He recommended a orange windscreen. I am going through the cycle once again. I told y'all I was gonna run out of colors. Go ahead and leave a like on the video to support my channel. It takes 2 seconds, literally 1, 2. You could have been done by now. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't already to keep up to date with my latest uploads. I upload like twice a week and I've been pretty consistent on it, so go ahead and support your boy because I got college loans to pay off. And there's a lot of them, man. There's a lot of them. The first tweet I want to look at today is by Yeah That's Cap. He says Ben Wallace and Bill Russell are the same players that played in different eras. And I don't agree that they're the same players, because I think a lot of people don't give Bill Russell enough credit for the passer that he was. And also I think as a leader, he is much more adequate than Ben Wallace. But I do think it's a pretty interesting observation that Bill Russell, Ben Wallace, and Dennis Rodman. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section if I'm missing anyone. But those are the few handful of NBA players throughout history that have made first ballot Hall of Fame careers pretty much just by how good they were on defense, despite not really being that good on offense, relatively speaking. So I know Ben Wallace is not in the Hall of Fame, but he definitely should be. Get him in there, man. Get him in there, because I don't know how he hasn't been. Actually, I do. It's Malice in the Palace, but still. Get him in there, bro. The next tweet I want to talk about, and this is definitely a hot take I want to get into, is by Hugo Rodrigo Palma. And he says that Anthony Davis is a better player than Giannis Antetokounmpo. And my reaction to that is, I think I'm open to it. I'm open to it. Because my views on Giannis after these playoffs, they've shifted. They've shifted because I knew for a fact that going into this year, Giannis was probably going to win MVP again. Like, I literally made a video going into this year saying that Giannis is probably going to win MVP. But I knew my thoughts on him were reserved for how he plays in the playoffs. Because we saw the same thing happen in 2019. He was phenomenal in the regular season, but when it came to the playoffs, when it came to winning time, he got exposed. He got exposed. So him winning the MVP this year, it really didn't change much for me. I needed to see what he was going to do in the playoffs. And I really did wanted to give him a little bit of leniency because, again, I wanted to see how he'll respond from how he performed last year. But when we got to this year, pretty much the same thing. The reason why the Bucks lost, the reason why Giannis underperformed was the exact same reason. When it came to the half-court setting, he just wasn't good enough of a shot creator to be effective. He effectively turned into a traditional center without an elite post-up game like a Joel Embiid. And he didn't have a bag in the half-court where you can just, clear out one side of the court and give him the ball like a, even a Paul George or a Kawhi Leonard or a LeBron James or a Kevin Durant. He didn't have that. And his playmaking ability and his decision making when a defense throws a wall at him is still really suspect. He either forces the situation too much and forces up a bad shot trying to draw a foul. And mind you, in the playoffs, refs are more lenient on physicality. So the fouls you were getting in the regular season, there's a chance you might not get them in the playoffs. But also, it's either that or he makes like a really bad pass and causes a turnover. Anthony Davis, on the other hand, he's not as good of a passer as Giannis Antetokounmpo. He hasn't proven to be able to be, the #1 option on a 60-win team like Giannis Antetokounmpo. But compared to Giannis, I think Anthony Davis is much better in the half-court setting because he can post up. You can isolate him in the mid-range and give him the ball, and he can create his own shot. And in that sense, I'd rather have Anthony Davis on my team than Giannis Antetokounmpo. And defensively, it's not like they're miles apart. I think they're on the same tier. They're both great defenders. They're both one of the best defenders in the league. And what this year showed specifically is that Anthony Davis can be a focal point of a championship level team. Like, most people view LeBron James as the best player on the Lakers, but Anthony Davis is playing so well that I think you can go as far as to say that it's a 1A, 1B type of situation instead of just a clear best player and a second best player like the Bucks with Giannis and Chris Middleton. Now, I'm not going to definitively say that Anthony Davis is better than Giannis. I'm not going to go that far, but again, I am open to the discussion. I'm not going to, bark at someone because they said Anthony Davis is better than Giannis Antetokounmpo. But I'm not just opening this conversation up just with Anthony Davis. After seeing Giannis's weaknesses and how this is going to be a problem for the next 2 years, probably at least next year. I don't think he's going to fix his whole game in just one offseason. If he does, that's crazy. But I'll open this conversation up with Luka. I'll open it up with, honestly, Nikola Jokic as well. I'd go that far. The next tweet we're going to look at is by Woe Boat, and he says that Isaiah Thomas only did well in the Celtics system, and that's why he hasn't had any success elsewhere. I disagree. Because I think a lot of people, even Celtics fans at the time, really didn't get how severe his hip injury was when he got traded to Cleveland. And that's been a really big part as to why he hasn't been good since he left the Boston Celtics. But I do agree with you on the sense that I do think that the Celtics system really did help Isaiah Thomas, reach his potential. I don't think he would have averaged 29 points a game on any other system. So I get you on that sense. But this idea that that's the only reason why he has played well in his career, or as well as he did, and that he couldn't average like 22, 23 points on another team if he was fully healthy, I disagree with that. The next tweet we're going to look at is by Smeehy, and he says that Harden needs to be moved. They won't win with that pairing. Cash out on him while you can. Westbrook is a bad contract, and it won't be moved for much, so just move Harden. I'm going to be honest, I get where you're coming from. Harden has underperformed a lot in the playoffs. I've made that statement as well, but I honestly disagree. I don't think they have to trade James Harden. For one, it's going to be extremely hard to fill the void that Harden leaves, just from a organizational standpoint, because that dude has brought a lot to that team. If I'm being honest, he's probably going to finish his career as a top 25 player all time, and you're just going to trade him while he's still in his prime. That's tough. That's tough. But also, if your plan is to move James Harden just because you can get more for him instead of Russell Westbrook, essentially what you're doing is building around Russell Westbrook. I don't think that's the plan either. So if I were you, if I were the Houston Rockets, I'd much rather take the chance of running it back with Russell Westbrook and James Harden than just building around Russell Westbrook. And I've said this in the past before, I think Mike D'Antoni is more to blame than James Harden or Russell Westbrook or Chris Paul or Daryl Morey. I think his system and the way he plays basketball or the way he coaches his team is much more detrimental to that team than the way James Harden performs. But not saying that James Harden's underperformances didn't matter at all, but I'm just saying in terms of the hierarchy of things, I'd put Mike D'Antoni at the top. So I'd much rather run it back with James Harden and Russell Westbrook with a new coach than just flat out just trade James Harden because it didn't win this year. The next tweet we're going to look at is by Sim to 2021, and he says that a center can no longer be the best player in the league and never will. I actually disagree. Because if the future of the center position is going to be Zion, it's gonna be Giannis Antetokounmpo, guys who really aren't even traditionally fives but are gonna be playing the five because of the way the game is heading in, and I think a center could be the best player in the NBA. But as long as Luka is playing the way he's playing, it's gonna be really hard to take over that spot, at least in the future. That's my prediction. But I get what you're saying. And also, to say they never will, I mean, you never know where the game is heading to next, so I wouldn't count that out outright, because it wasn't too long ago when people thought that you couldn't win with a point guard leading a team. It wasn't too long ago when people thought that you couldn't win with a three-point shooting team, and Steph Curry just destroyed the argument. That whole franchise just destroyed the argument. But obviously they are kind of the outlier, so I get it in that perspective, but you just never know. And the last tweet I want to talk about is by DTXL, and he says that MJ had a carry job in his second three-peat, that Pippen was less effective and he was injured a lot too, and Dennis Rodman also was super old by then and became a shadow of himself. MJ carried the Bulls to the second three-peat. Now, I agree for the most part. But I do disagree in the sense that despite everything you just said, and there's a lot of valid points you made, the Chicago Bulls still had some of the most talented teams in that season, in those years. Not a lot of teams could say that they have not only Michael Jordan, but Scottie Pippen with a hint of Dennis Rodman, even though he wasn't, you know, the beast that he was in 96 and years prior. But on top of that, they had guys like Ron Harper. They had guys like Steve Kerr. They had guys like Tony Kukoc. So it wasn't like they didn't have talent at all. And also they had Phil Jackson, the greatest coach of all time. So I don't want to talk like they didn't have talent whatsoever and Michael Jordan was just carrying a bunch of scrubs. But I do think that, again, I said this in my last video, that not a lot of people talk about how much Jordan really had to carry in the second three-peat. There's a decent population out there that just thought that in the second three-peat, just because Scottie Pippen was on the team, just because Dennis Rodman was on the team, just because they won 72 and 10 in 96, that in 97 and 98, that they were just this extremely dominant team as a whole. A lot of the success they had in the playoffs in those last 2 years specifically was because of a carry job by Michael Jordan. A lot of those years, Scottie Pippen played pretty bad in the playoffs. A lot of those years, Scottie Pippen was injured in the playoffs. Not a lot of those years, like in the last 2 years specifically, he was injured a lot in the playoffs. Dennis Rodman really did take a pretty decent dip after 96 and he was getting benched. And just look at game 6 1998, look at flu game 1997, just look at the series stats as a whole, and you can see that Michael Jordan did not have as much help as the roster makes it seem. But that is going to be it for today's video. Again, if you guys want to be in a future iteration of hot takes from NBA Twitter, go ahead and follow your boy at bsouls_. I tweet them out a week prior to me uploading them, and you guys can submit your hot takes and hopefully I'll react to them. There are a lot and I only pick what, 1 2 3 4, I can't count, 1 2 3 4 5 6 takes out of like 100 something, so I can't get to all of them, but you know, worth a shot. I do want to interact with you guys when I can. Leave a like on the video if you liked it, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, but your boy is out. Peace.